episode of the PsychSessions podcast is sponsored by Pearson Revel, which I think is a game changer for students and teachers. I started using Revel a few years ago, and I can't imagine going back to what I was doing before. Revel helps me feel more responsible as an educator, knowing that my students are receiving evidence-based learning experiences, like retrieval practice. The single best thing about it for me is that it gets students to read. Do you know how long it's been since I've said to a colleague, my students just won't read the book? Yeah, Revel helped me solve that problem. And with that out of the way, I have all kinds of freedom to design the course I want. Now, I assign readings from the text with a click of a button that is delivered to my students as a tracked assignment according to whatever date I schedule. Revel is fully digital and highly engaging. It also has a mobile app that allows students to read, listen, or practice on any device. And students truly like it. So do yourself a favor, check out Revel. PsychSessions listeners can try Revel out for one term at no cost to your students. For more information, please email revel@pearson.com or visit go.pearson.com/PsychSessions. Welcome to this 100th episode of PsychSessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld, along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. This particular episode also includes third host, Sue Frantz, who facilitated the conversation between me and Eric. Many of you joined us a few evenings ago as we recorded this live in front of a Zoom studio audience. So we had lots of people watching in, posting questions in the chat, and Sue navigated that really, really well for us. And so again, thanks, Sue Frantz, for your help on this. Now, one thing before we get going into this 100th episode, let me just say that sometimes technology just does not go right, and sometimes it doesn't go right at big moments. We were recording this on Zencastr, our typical podcast platform during this pandemic, as well as having the live event on Zoom at the same time. And I'm not sure quite what happened, but nothing went right in the post-production side of things. So this is pretty much the exact conversation we had with a few edits because there was some sneaky things that happened that I really don't understand at this point. Also, Sue's microphone, for whatever reason, had a little bit of jumpiness to it. You're going to hear it. It's got some distortion that is a little bit distracting, but I think it'll be fine for listeners overall. So thanks for your patience with us as we are just trying to do our best with technology and such. All right, well, let's get you into this conversation. And again, thank you for supporting the PsychSessions podcast. Well, of course, we couldn't get going without mentioning STP, our 2020 sponsor for the PsychSessions podcast. That's STP, the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2, our people. And Eric and I want you to become members for only $25 a year. Please become a member of this wonderful society, reap the benefits, join the community. It's a great group of people, and we want you to be a part of it. STP is seeking chairs and members for several committees. Visit the Get Involved page on the STP website, teachpsych.org, for more information. Also, the annual conference on teaching will be held virtually in October. Current STP members and anyone who joins STP before the virtual conference will have complimentary access to the conference. Visit teachpsych.org and check under the conferences tab for further information. That is just one more reason to go to teachpsych.org right now, folks, and become a member for $25 a year. And you know what? It's our 100th episode, and I just want to take this moment to thank Tom Pusateri, Executive Director of the Society, for working with me and sending me these commercials. And you might ask yourself, well, when's Tom going to be on the podcast? Well, we've got a plan for that, so stay tuned. And here is our 100th episode of the PsychSessions podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the 100th episode of Psych Sessions. We're so thankful and we have so much gratitude. Just that, first off, that we made it to 100 episodes, and we don't do this without our listeners. And we have so many people to thank tonight. And we've got literally a screen full of people with us, overflowing onto another screen if you're with us on Zoom. And there's so many things to talk about. We're going to take questions from the people who are with us. We've got our moderator and good friend, Sue Frantz. And so thank you for joining us. I'm going to let Garth jump in here. We'll turn it over to Sue, and away we go.
Yeah, we talked about all the thanks that we need to give people, and we want to apologize if we miss any particular organization or individual who has supported us over these 100 episodes. Eric, do you know how many years has it been now? 3?
So we actually started the process in March of 2017. We launched our first 3 episodes in November of 2017. At the time, iTunes, now Apple Podcast, had a rule that when you launched a new podcast, you had to launch 3 episodes in their iTunes store. So we launched in October or November of 2017. So it's 3.5 years or so.
Yeah, most of our conversations have been recorded in person, but we recently have pivoted like everybody else has for the pandemic. Eric and I always had this value of we wanted to be face-to-face with people. There's a different quality of conversation when you're in the room with someone, but we're grateful for this technology that allows us to do this today and has allowed us to interview some wonderful guests and actually has opened some doors up for us as well to interview some people who we might not get. So those episodes are upcoming as well and will be for the foreseeable future. So 100 episodes behind us. APS, we started this with an APS grant. STP has been a massive supporter of us and has just in every way that I could possibly think of. So many people in this room, this Zoom room, have been such massive supporters of us. We are now getting sponsorships for the Psych Sessions podcast, which is great because there was, for a couple of years, no way for us to finance what we were doing for the monthly fees and those kinds of things. So just to keep this thing running, we're so grateful that this is all worked out. So that's my little gratitude piece. Anything else for gratitude there, Eric?
Yeah, just a couple things. Let's talk about specific people. So this thing doesn't get started really without probably the premium matchmaker in STP, Sue Frantz. And so I went independently, maybe, 2014, 2015, and had a conversation with Sue and talked about, I'm kind of interested in doing a podcast. And I started talking with Sue and actually talking with Verla as well, her wife, and talking about, I have some ideas, but they're not really well formed, but I don't want to do this alone. And my understanding is that Garth had kind of a parallel conversation with Sue. And one of the many things that Sue does well is she does this matchmaking. She puts people and ideas together when she hears about them. And I will just be honest with you, my gratitude for Sue is unbounding because I wouldn't have done this alone. I just didn't want to do it by myself. This is something I wanted to do as a collaboration. So Sue, sincerely, thank you for doing that. Another thank you would be to Jane Hallinan, because Jane has been an ardent supporter of Psych Sessions from the very beginning. She might have been guest number 3 or 4 on the list. She's been one of only 2 repeat guests, although she's been on in a couple different ways in addition to that. And one of the things that she did kind of early on, how on movie shows you'll hear about actors, getting notes. I'm going to take a note from the director or the screenwriter. Garth and I got notes from Jane. We didn't really ask for them, but she was very generous in giving us, on these couple episodes over here, you guys did this thing and it was pretty good, but if you think about doing it this way or that way, and she was just amazingly generous from the bottom of her heart, with everything, her heart in the right place, has really been just unconditional positive love for the podcast, and so we really appreciate it. Obviously, we don't have a podcast without listeners, and so I just can't believe how successful it's been in our own little world. I don't know if you remember when you were a kid or a teenager in college, not in the COVID-19 era, but remember when you used to plan a party and you would tell people about it and you would hope that people would show up to it, but you didn't ever really know? Garth and I have been planning parties and people have actually showed up, and it's been really gratifying. And this has been our way of providing professional development for free for 4 years now. And so we're really grateful to that. Garth, I promise I'm going to stop here in a second. I have to thank Marianne Lloyd for her amazing contributions with Ask Psych Sessions. I have to thank Anna Ropp, who's with us tonight, for her amazing new startup of Sodal Psych Sessions. I mean, these are folks who are coming on board and doing their own features, and they're doing it independently, and we're serving new audiences. And finally, obviously, Garth, thank you so much. I wouldn't want to do this without you. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. That probably won't be the last time that we get a little emotional today, because Eric and I, our relationship goes back to one of the first Tip Northwest, maybe the very first Tip Northwest in Seattle. I had him out as a keynote speaker, and I didn't really. Sue's got the glass there. I didn't really know him that well, and
no idea what you're getting into.
Well, we met for a couple hours, and then Psych Sessions not only represents this passion that we have to just learn from others and talk with others and offer professional development, but it also it represents this journey of growing friendships, not only with Eric, which is, where else do Eric and Garth become really great lifelong friends, but also with so many of you. So yeah, that is there is definitely all that emotion is behind 100 episodes, and then and all that emotion is kind of what we're carrying in with us tonight. All right. So I'm gonna pass this over to Sue. Sue, I also just want to echo what Eric said. I had a conversation with you. I can't remember where. Probably at a coffee shop in Seattle or something like that, or just outside, maybe in Renton. And that bit of information of putting us together, Eric and I always talk about it. Psych Sessions doesn't happen without you, and you were the perfect person to come host tonight for us. We not only think you are such a valuable friend, but you are also just an amazing, gifted educator, and we've learned so much from you over the years. And so you're our host. And so I'm going to turn this over to you. You have anything to say right off the start?
Well, in terms of the origin story, my contribution was just remembering that it was Eric who had a conversation with me about starting a podcast. So that's actually one of my great life achievements, is just remembering who it was who said that they were thinking about it.
That's a good contribution.
It is good. It is good.
And you're underplaying, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of rare, quite honestly.
You know what? The big discussion going over here in the chat is how everyone is nominating Jane Hounen and I to run the world. So my head is plenty big already. So I'm just going to go and try and underplay just a little bit.
And I'm purposely not looking at the chat.
No, that's my job, is to be over here and be distracted.
FYI. Yeah. Okay.
Well, right. Sue, we've the three of us have talked about kind of a roadmap for tonight. You have some questions for us. Eric and I have some questions for each other that neither of us has heard. We're going to take some questions. So I'll toss it over to you.
Well, I'm just going to start with the most obvious one, which is 100 episodes is a lot. So what does it mean to you to reach this point of 100 episodes?
Well, it's a great place for me to announce that I'm done. I'm out. It's a great place for my retirement, and Garth's got to pick someone new. No, it's kind of one of these, I don't know, late life gifts that I wasn't expecting. just because you start something doesn't mean it's going to work or be effective or have an impact. And so the really cool thing about it is that I've gotten to sit down with people, some people I know really well and some people I know a little bit, and just gotten to know them better. I know I've said this on the podcast a bunch of times, but we go to a conference, at least we used to. We go to a conference and we might sit and have dinner for a couple hours, or we might sit in a bar or in a restaurant or something, and we would talk for a while, and you get to know somebody a little bit, but you don't go deep. You don't talk about how they grew up or their high school or what they majored in as an undergraduate. And Psych Sessions has given, I guess, the liberty to do that. And so I've gotten to know people, many of them on this screen, way better than I would normally, even if I've spent a fair amount of time with them. And so it's just been this luxurious gift of time with people who have been very gracious in sharing their stories. And I think your stories as guests have been inspirational to other people around the country. And we actually have data that I can share other people around the world. I mean, we have listeners all around the world. So I think that's been a surprise to me, that just getting to know people better and that some people seem to be interested in those stories.
Yeah, when I think about 100 episodes, the first memory that comes to mind is when Eric and I, where were we? We were interviewing Charles Brewer, and I think I got Eric drunk that night, which was fun.
It's very rare these days.
It is very rare. But I think we just had a tequila and we celebrated 25 episodes, or maybe we weren't even to 25, and maybe you said at 25 we need to have a $25 shot of tequila, and that was so long ago. And what I'm thinking about here is how much it has not been a burden. 100 episodes has been a gift. It has been a labor of love. There are so many behind the scenes things that need to get done in order to get that one episode out. And I can't remember a time where it wasn't worth the effort. And it's some effort to do. And so I think many of you could probably relate with a hobby or your research or something that just doesn't feel hard to you because you love it so much. And for us to have a record of that, like an MP3 record of the labor of our love, is again, just a gift to me personally. So that's how I think about 100 episodes.
By the way, when we walk into interview Charles Brewer in Charleston, South Carolina, we're with we're with John Batson. And John had been a student of Charles, a colleague, and then became a dear friend and kind of a caretaker. And the first words between them, Charles and John are arguing about whether or not Charles is going to put his teeth in. Because Charles doesn't want to put his teeth in because they're uncomfortable, but he looks better with his teeth in. And so that's the first argument those are the first words we hear when we walk into Charles's room.
And I didn't know Charles ahead of time, but people tell us, and you've met him a number of times, that his voice is just, it's unmistakable. So even without his teeth in, it was Charles Brewer.
It was still Charles Brewer, but it was just funny to be part of that little Bickerson's moment between two really good friends. Put your teeth in. I don't want to. Charles fought back the way Charles would fight back about something,
And I think that that's foreshadowing. I think that that's exactly the conversation that's going to happen between Garth and Eric. And we look forward to hearing that on the podcast.
Put your hair on. I don't want to put my hair on. I don't have any hair. Yeah, exactly.
On behalf of your listeners, you mentioned the gift, the gift that this has been to you. And of course, this has been a tremendous gift to the teaching of psychology community. The community has always been a tight-knit community that we have relied on conferences and to a certain extent the AP reading to bring us all together. So your timing on this is actually pretty good. That during this time of the pandemic, we do have the opportunity to go back and listen to what will now be 100 episodes and hear our friends. So thank you for that.
Our pleasure.
It's interesting. It didn't occur to us. Our first retreat was probably after a year of doing this, where we actually pulled it off and had some episodes under our belt. And then Eric flew to Seattle, and we had a day-long kind of retreat, whiteboards full of ideas and kind of what's next, and have brought some of those ideas to fruition. But we, it is, just to use this gift metaphor, it is like constantly opening a gift. We didn't know that until the idea comes to us. We don't realize that we can record people's sessions at conferences, keynote talks that we can then package up and send out as a virtual conference, which we did on January 1st of this year, I think. Eric, was that right? And so it keeps giving. And so we feel very set up to thrive in this kind of environment, this pandemic environment that we're in right now.
But even before the pandemic, the first mini series we put together was called Intro PsychSessions. And in the summer, we got together 8 educators from high school, community college, and university, and had them talk to 20 for 30 minutes about their intro psych course. And we put them together so that you could batch them for, binge listening in July and August, right before people went back to school. The unexpected, there's a couple unexpected things that have happened. One is we became accidental oral historians. And I think that happens with, we give credit to STP for that, because they funded trips to go interview Bill McKeechee. They funded the trip to go interview Charles Brewer. The other kind of unexpected things happened is that we've discovered the ability, and pardon the overuse of this term, to pivot. And so when we had the online pivot in March, Marianne Lloyd assembles like 8 Ask Psych Sessions mini episodes about what are the best practices in online education. And she finds the best people in the country to answer our questions about that. And a couple months later, we just got done in the last 2 weeks. She assembled 9 more questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we have this beautiful opportunity to pivot in a week's time and answer questions that are of interest to our community. And so in some ways, I feel really bad that these big, super important things like Psych 1 and ACT and the APA convention have to change modality and sometimes be canceled. But for us, we've been able to keep on trucking and increase the services and increase what we've been able to give back to teachers of psychology.
Let me jump in there, Eric, because you mentioned Bill McKeechee, and I don't want to get through this hour without talking for a moment about Bill McKeechee. And also, I think there's one more thanks we need to give, and that's to Ken Keith. Was really important to and an early supporter of PsychSessions as a part of. I think he was president of STP, or past president, when this all went down. So he and Sue really advocated for us, and Jane, obviously. But Bill McKeechee, that was surreal for me. Obviously, Bill McKeechee is no longer with us. But to be with this unbelievable, not only unbelievable educator, but a really, truly an unbelievable man, and to be with him and hear his stories was really cool. It was a highlight of the first 100 episodes, certainly. Eric, anything else to say?
No, I've rambled too long. I'm going to let Sue get back in here and help us navigate.
We have some audience questions. Jane Allen wonders how much luck has been involved in pulling this enterprise off.
Well, hold on. I'm going to jump in. Okay, so Jane, that was a nice dig against Eric. I appreciate that. More of those, please. Eric, this is actually a question that I have for you. I'm going to piggyback this into something a little more serious, because what Jane is bringing up here, and that wasn't a plant, but what Jane is bringing up is that many people, just in the way that they think about their careers, we've noticed in interviewing them that it'll come to some point in the interview where they attribute their or their current circumstances or fortunate outcomes to luck or some variation. And Eric, I have this question for you, because you stop people almost every time and you have this conversation with them. Now, people can listen to any episode and pretty much hear that you have the same conversation with people, but I really like it. You're reminding people of their strengths. And so I'm getting to a question here. The question is, and I think it has something to do with the imposter syndrome too, which is something that you often bring up in your conversations with people. Why is it so important to you that people take responsibility for their successes? And then again, I'm just going to say that I think it might have something to do with the imposter syndrome. But why is it important to you? And that's what I'm asking.
Jane, I'm so lucky that you asked this question. I really am. I'm so fortunate that you did. All right, so here's the serious response, and it's multi-layered. Obviously, people can think whatever they want about their careers, and they can frame it. There's at least two parts of this. I think people use the word luck as a way to express humility. They don't want to brag about their smarts. They don't want to brag about their hard work. They don't want to brag about the 18-hour days or the grant that they wrote and rewrote to be able to accomplish what they did, because they know that bragging is off-putting, and they know that saying that, yeah, I'm a world-class researcher and that's what's got me to this point. They don't want to say that because that's off-putting. So they say, I was just lucky. My problem with that expression is when other people hear that explanation. When early career psychologists, when graduate students, when postdocs hear that from very accomplished people, like the one and only beloved Bill McKeechee, if you hear him say, I was just lucky, and it was just luck, then, and you believe that, not knowing anything else, then that attribution means it doesn't matter what I do. I have to wait and stand by and wait for luck to strike. That's my problem. I understand that people don't want to brag, and it is not beloved in our society to say, yeah, I worked my ass off, and 16 years later I finally got that $1.2 million grant, and I've got a great team behind me, and we're going to do fantastic things. And it took 6 publications, and it's awesome. And we don't like to strut or whatever because it's unbecoming. But why not do that? Why not be role models for the people in the labs that you've been working with and working for? Why not be a role model to your peers and your colleagues? Why not take a bow, and a bow is deserved when you've done that? So that, and it is part of imposter syndrome, and it is part of, it is part of gender inequities and racial inequities, and it's part of the system where people aren't treated fairly, and it's all built in and wrapped into all of that, and it's very complicated. And so I just try to stop people in their tracks, and it's not like it's my job. I haven't been appointed to do this, but I guess I'm self-appointed to say, David Myers tells a story where he got lucky going to a conference and sitting next to at a table where he got asked to write a chapter about something that led to an invitation. He worked his ass off to get to the conference, and he earned his right to be at the table. And maybe it was fortuitous that someone didn't do the work that they committed to and he got asked to, but he got himself there.
Yeah.
It wasn't lucky.
And let me ask you this. This issue, I find it very interesting. I love when you go into this with guests because I like them to understand this about themselves.
I think it gets irritating.
No.
And I think it gets irritating to listeners. We could do a little poll right now.
Well, no. But listen to my question. I want to know, why is it important to you?
Because with my students at Boise State, and then I started noticing it in my interviews, I noticed that female students and female interviewees were doing it more than male students and male interviewees. I didn't like that. And I just decided I was going to speak up about it and stop people. And I know it's not a very effective campaign one at a time, but I just decided that every time I heard it, I was going to stop it. I think it's got to be irritating to listeners, and maybe people will chime in later through Sue.
I actually blame the guests because if they haven't listened to an episode where you're hosting, it's their own fault.
But Bill McKeechee, bless his heart, may he rest in peace. He did it all the time. And, I think Jane wrote a chapter about him that said, I think the subtitle was, I was just lucky. And then I got to write a chapter about him later, and my subtitle was more than just luck. Yeah. So I had my little fight, I fought back in chapter title war about, what it was. And again, you want to depict your career in your own way, that's fine. But, I didn't like that gender inequity between women. My female colleagues and my female students were not taking credit for the awesome things they were doing. They were chalking it up to luck, and they were doing the work, and it was amazing work. And that bothered me.
Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry for going on so long about it. Again, Jane.
So I think what I would like to add here is that your campaign is not one person at a time. You've got 60,000 unique downloads.
Yeah, we're pretty close. This morning, I checked 58,905 unique downloads according to our service provider, Libsyn. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 60,000, we'll call it 60, right? We round up, right? The 60,000 is different than the 100, right? Because when you ask about the 100 episodes, I think about all the work that goes in for the guests and the hosts and all the editing and posting and emails and everything that makes that work. When I think about the 60,000, and they call them, like Libsyn calls them unique downloads. That's how they track. And that word unique means something to me in this moment. That it's unique to each person who's listening to it. It's really getting down to the person. There are people who are listening to our interviews in their cars and in their offices and at the gym or on their runs, which is where I listen to it. And that, because it's so personal, that number floors me, that people have spent 60,000 hours with PsychSessions. That's pretty amazing.
You'd think they'd have something better to do with their time.
Grade, I don't know.
Well, that's because they're caught up on Joe Rogan, and so they're waiting for more Joe Rogan episodes to come out. The number one podcast in the world.
We're waiting for our Spotify deal from he got 100 million. We're hoping for $100 maybe.
Let me grab another question out of the chat from Allison Melly. Have you met people you would not have otherwise met had it not been for the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I can think
Well, Garth for sure. Garth interviewed Phil Zimbardo and Albert Bandura.
Yeah.
I'd already met Al. I'm going to call him Al.
Yeah. We call him Al here at PsychSessions. Al Bandura.
I have to look at the list.
Yeah, Al Bandura was that one I got nervous for. I don't always get nervous for interviewing folks, but that one was pretty big. Obviously McKeechee, Brewer, Zimbardo. Zimbardo probably would have done an interview, but Jane hooked that up. I mean, he probably has done many, many interviews, but Jane hooked that up with us and made that connection. And actually, that just happened by attending a party at APA convention in San Francisco. There was a dinner or something like that, and I probably shouldn't have been there, but I was somebody's plus one, and so was Phil. I mean, Phil probably should have been there, I guess, but
it was a reception at APA hosted in San Francisco, I believe.
Yeah.
There's no one, so most of the people we've interviewed that I was part of the interview, I already knew. So there really haven't been too many people I've been nervous to interview, I must say.
Yeah. I should probably mention that I had met already Elizabeth Yost Hammer, and I only mentioned that particular episode because it was unique, because I erased the episode. It never recorded, or it shut off or something like that halfway through. And so she was lovely enough to redo the episode. So I got to meet her twice and hear her origin story twice, but you all only heard it once.
That was an alcohol infusion type of incident is what happened there.
Never.
The first time.
No, I think the SD card ran out, I think is actually what happened.
Yeah, that's what happens when you spill alcohol on it.
So with that, let's go ahead and switch. I know that each of you have a surprise question for the other. So Garth, you want to start with your question?
Yeah. Well, you already heard one of mine, which was about luck. And the other one that I would just want to ask you, Eric, is PsychSessions. We know what it has meant professionally. We've been able to take this, and we've always talked about a non-traditional contribution to teaching of psychology. This one might be difficult. I don't know, but how has this affected things outside of our teaching community in your life? So I'm thinking your wife, Lisa, your kids, your colleagues, your students, and I don't know why I started just thinking about legacy at the same time.
Yeah, I think about that a little bit. I think it'll be fun that when I'm dead and gone here in a couple weeks, they'll actually be able to go back and I'm just trying to be funny. It's probably not that funny. They'll have snippets of conversations of the episodes that I recorded. They can go back and they can hear stories that I occasionally infuse. Believe it or not, when I'm interviewing someone, I really try not to talk about me that much, although sometimes it's hard to not do. But there are episodes where my life interplays more, overlaps with the guest, compared to other episodes. So I think there will be pieces of legacy that they can go back and listen to that could be heartwarming or could be surprising. There have been episodes where I've talked about my overlap with regards to things like divorce and, raising kids, as a divorced dad, when that has related to guests that I've had on. And so there are also things that I've talked about with guests where my backgrounds overlap. I see Jen Dyer Seymour on the screen, and we talked about our overlap in theater. And so there are fun things that you can talk about there as well, and maybe they will enjoy hearing those stories. So I think there is a little bit of legacy there, and I think the lasting legacy is that whether it's retirement or some other reason, that I would like the PsychSessions world domination headquarters to continue after I'm done with it. So I hope it continues in new and different and exciting ways after I'm finished.
Hey, quick follow-up question, Eric, and that...
No, those aren't allowed. So my question to you, Garth, is...
No, my question is, do you... how much of your own opinions and your own how much of your own private life and your own opinions do you hold back in your Psych Sessions interviews, or is everything fair game? Like, how much are you filtering?
You got to tell me a little bit more about what you mean.
Well, when you come to that microphone as host, and it's obviously about somebody else, how much filtering do you do in terms of, I don't want this, I'm not going to disclose this, and I don't know if it's related to also your professional persona, but not, I mean, just of interest to me right now.
I would give it all up for only about, I'd only hold back maybe about 5%. I mean, obviously, don't we all have a handful of things that we really don't want the rest of the world to know about us?
Yeah.
I got those.
Right. Well,
I got
and
those.
that doesn't surprise me, because when we started,
No, it doesn't surprise me.
No. It doesn't surprise me that you hold back very little, because when we started this, it wasn't supposed to be this very professional podcast interview program. It was conversations about teaching and stuff. It was going to be casual. It was going to be disarming. We were hoping to get people's real stories and get vulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a, as everybody can tell, who's ever listened to or who's on with us tonight, it's off the hip. So much so that we tell everybody who's a guest, you have complete editorial control. So after the fact, if you said something and 2 months later you go, oh my gosh, I don't want that broadcast, we'll edit it out. And sometimes, I'd say 5 or 6 times out of 100, some people will say, oh my gosh, I said that thing about that high school teacher. Will you please edit that out? And of course we do.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened very often.
No, sure hasn't.
Now, Eric, your question for Garth.
So Garth, if you look back at the first 100 episodes, what stands out to you as the most surprising or perhaps the most rewarding thing that happened in the first 100 episodes?
Huh.
And I'm going to have a follow-up.
Okay. And maybe not the most, but a surprising thing is whenever you create something, and whether it is something creative or innovative, you just have no idea what it's going to do and if it's going to land. And for people who do try a lot of things, I think that there is this kind of understanding that lots of them don't work out. And you have ideas and you try to pull people together. Recently, a number of months ago, I had kind of a book idea that I thought was pretty interesting, and I threw it out to a couple people and who were either was busy or not interested in it. And I've learned that you can't really get discouraged when that happens. That if you're in the business of creating some things and doing some things, you just have to keep going. And then when it does turn out, the whole thing's surprising. So the fact that I've been able to sit down with 50 different people for an hour and hear these stories, it is always surprising. The fact that we keep data that shows how many listeners, when we look at those numbers, or when I look at those numbers, it's surprising. It's not promised when you start something like this that it's going to, be entertaining to people or be helpful to people. The fact that we've been able to bring on Marianne and Anna, and that they're doing this amazing work, that's surprising. This is, I guess, gift is the metaphor.
It's not surprising they're doing amazing work. It's just surprising that we keep blossoming and that the audience keeps asking for things and we keep having success.
Right. Well,
that they're doing amazing work is not amazing.
Thanks for correcting that. That's true. But what is surprising is that a single idea, a seed can grow into something. And guess what? We're never going to be Joe Rogan. This is probably we have this little niche area that we want to serve really, really well, but it still continues to surprise us. And I don't think numbers are everything either. Sometimes I think if we just had 100 listeners and it was our pals and it was really quality programming and we were doing something important, that we would still do it for the love of it.
I just want to follow up on two things that you said there really well. I think, in 3.5 years, 58,000 unique downloads. my entire career, and I know this podcast isn't mine, but just for an example, my work will not be cited 58,000 times. And I doubt if 58,000 people will read what I have written. This podcast will have more impact than my career cumulatively. And just like what you said about if only 100 people listen to it, think about all the people, most of the people we on this screen we know and we love, by the way. And they're also fortunate that in regular times they get to go to conferences and conventions and they get that professional development. But we also know of colleagues in places, whether high school, community college, university, who never get professional development, who never get to travel. This podcast provides professional development to those folks. Whether it's a down year with no money, or they just couldn't get away, or family considerations, or COVID-19. So I really feel like there's a niche here, and maybe I'm Pollyanna about this, but the best is yet to come. We still have more ideas we haven't tried yet.
Martha Bano, a staff member at APA, was telling me a story that it was at an APA convention, and she was walking behind a couple young people, and one said to the other something about pointing out somebody famous, and Martha unfortunately didn't see who it was that they were talking about. But the response from the other person was, "Is that person famous or psychology famous?" So you two may not quite understand this, but you are teaching of psychology famous. And I am really looking forward to the next conference I attend, because I'm just going to be walking behind you the entire time. And there are going to be people who will be pointing over there, and they're going to be too shy to come up to you. And I am
That's
looking
really
forward to
sweet,
that.
Sue. But I remember watching you at VicTop in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and watching the University of Missouri crowd just go gaga goo goo over you. So I know what teaching of psychology famous looks like. Just look in the mirror, my dear.
Well, in my defense, those three are crazy.
Yeah, Brooke.
And don't edit that out.
Yeah, Brooke and Danae are pretty crazy, but they're awesome too.
And they're not the only ones there.
Yeah, I know.
So let's, while we're talking about surprising things, we have a question from McIntarfer. The most surprising moment during a podcast interview.
Yeah, Bethany Fleck, episode 28, RMPA. I want to say 2018, I think. I'd known Bethany for years, and I think it was coming back after one of these dinners that you go to at a conference, and she'd had some wine and I had some beer, and RMPA was very generous to give us space. Thank you, Anna, again. And we're just firing up the microphones and chatting there and having a really great discussion. And she started sharing this notion about mommy guilt, and started talking very seriously about, and at that time she had one daughter, she now has two daughters, and started talking about how every day when she goes to school she feels guilty. Every day when she leaves home she's torn, because she wants to be a mother to her daughter, but she wants to be this great professor that she knows that she could be. And we just had this conversation that clicked. And I think for me, at that point in my podcasting history, I grew up a little bit that day, because I realized these conversations not only can be interesting, but they can be really meaningful on deep, important topics. And if you listen hard enough and close enough, you pay attention, there's really something that other people that can take out of that. Something, I don't know what it was. I can't explain it. I'm not an oral historian. I'm not an interviewer. But something happened during that interview that just clicked for me. I need to tune in and pay attention and just listen, because there's a story being told here that's really meaningful.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback that, and I'm not going to give a specific surprising moment, but what is always surprising is how much we learn that we don't know. Because you don't get to have these hallway conversations that we have at our institutions. They don't last an hour. You don't get into people's past, their history and their hardships and the lessons that they learned and the places they grew up from in, which were different than the place where you grew up. And to gain that perspective and to learn those lessons from people, I'm thinking about just stories that people have about, being in experiencing Katrina. People's personal traumas that have come up and shaped their career, and people who come from different backgrounds, urban life, Midwest, places that I haven't identified with, people, different cultural backgrounds. That has been, it's been a surprise to learn, to continue to be a student, to learn what I don't know about people's plights and their successes and failures.
They're just fascinating. I'll give you one more. Lisa Valise, community college faculty member at, I might get it wrong, Southwest College, along the southern Texas border, and she talks about her students commuting to campus. They commute across an international border. She's a Psi Beta chapter advisor, and not only dealing with the challenges of students who are, first gen, sometimes low income, sometimes non-native speakers, but the challenge of commuting to school across an international border daily and trying to be a Psi Beta chapter advisor, having to explain why would a student have to stay after school to be part of a club and risk getting back across the border, the international border. I mean, the amazing dedication that Liza has for her students was just awe-inspiring. You want to hear me cry again? Go listen to the episode with Loretta McGregor, recorded the same day. That's a good one for a good baller if you want to hear me cry again, because we have a great past and a great history. So anyway.
There's this, often when we are in conversations with people, I'm just reminded in this season of how little I know, how much growth there is to be done for us as educators, and to be able to sit down across from people and learn from them is unbelievable. I would have never heard those stories if I wouldn't have been doing the PsychSessions podcast. And so while you're hosting and you don't want to make a complete fool out of yourself, oftentimes you're faced with that's how you learn, and it's on public display, which is kind of tough sometimes. I found that a little difficult. There's a voice in my head that says, people are going to be surprised that you didn't know that, or because it is putting yourself out there. But we have been pretty true not to edit those moments out of either having an emotional response to something, or to really just looking dumb from time to time as well.
I am thankful that Garth sometimes edits out my excessive crying. He'll only leave in a slice of my crying, but my excessive crying does get edited out. So thank you, Garth.
Yeah, you got it.
There's a little insight that we didn't have, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Garth, was that enough time for you to think of the most surprising moment during a podcast interview for you?
No, I think that was it. Yeah.
All right, we'll go with that. I'm good with that. We do have a couple questions that are related, so I'll just go ahead and put them together. Joshua Weed was wondering, can you comment on the impact that you've made on the teaching of psychology? And I think related to that is Lindsay Maslin's question. You were already rockstar teachers before you started PsychSessions, but she's wondering how you feel you've changed as teachers yourselves in giving all of these interviews. So to sum up, basically, what has this all meant for the teaching of psychology for other people and for yourselves?
You want to go?
No, go ahead.
So I'm not so sure I'm the one that gets to say, what does it mean for the teaching of psychology? I'm not so sure that's my judgment that I get to make. Lindsay, thank you very much for the compliment. That's very sweet. Um, what I think it does, what I think it helps, maybe the best thing I think PsychSessions does for me or allows me to do is it allows me to give a spotlight on others. I'm very blessed. I'm very privileged. I've been given a lot of things, many of them that I don't deserve because I'm white, I'm male, and I was born in the United States. And so I didn't do anything to earn those three traits, qualities, and characteristics. So I have this podium, I have this spotlight that now I can spotlight on other people, and that is a gift that I enjoy giving very, very much. And so I think that's the best thing that I can do with this soapbox. That's what I want to use it for. I don't think that exactly answers your question, but
I'll jump in.
What I see doing with it.
I'll jump in with contributions to the teaching of psychology. I don't know that we can measure that, but I do know that it surprised us when it surprised us when STP said when we put an application through to their grant program last year, and they said we want to sponsor PsychSessions for 2020. It lets us know that somebody's finding it helpful. So it is having some impact. We're not quite sure what it is, but the best people who are at that table on that executive committee or making those decisions on those committees find some value in it. Our friends find some value in it. And those who are really close to are honest with us, like Jane, about what's working. And often it is what's working and what's helpful. And so that's really nice. I am not like a lot of great teachers out there who are nose into the literature, reading everything about best teaching practices and what's the new stuff that's coming out. That's just not me. I very much appreciate what I have learned from so many of you who are doing incredibly inspiring and effective teaching methods and strategies and course designs in your class. And it allows me to kind of pick and steal and kind of learn after the fact, let you go first. And it's one of the best things that I've done for my students is talk to a bunch of you and learn from you.
With that, I've got one more question here, and then we're going to look to the future. Okay. And then I think we're ready to wrap it up. Nolan White wonders the best and worst location for recording an episode.
Location or experience?
I think that it should be whatever's going to give us the better story.
Well, I will tell you about the one failed recording that I had. I was in Phoenix, and it's really sad that this didn't work, but I was trying to record the early career psychologists, and it was 5 of them, all 5 of them, and we were in Phoenix. I had them in a conference room, and 5 plus them is 6 with me, and I only had 4 microphones, and so a couple of them were swiveling microphones back and forth between them. We talked for about hour and 15 minutes, and after recording it and listening to it, the sound quality was so bad that and we tried to fix it in post. That's the word. We tried to fix it in post, and we just couldn't fix it. It was just not salvageable. So I reached out to all 5 of them, and I gave them all individual invitations. Anytime you're ready, we'll interview you, and you can have your own episode. But I still feel bad about that we spent that time together, and usually one of us, Garth or me, when we're together, or I had an earwig and I was listening, but I wasn't listening close enough because usually you're trying to monitor the sound quality while you're recording. But I wasn't listening close enough, and it was awful. It was almost like I was drinking with Elizabeth Yost Hammer while recording the first version of a two-part podcast series. So I felt really bad about
You
that.
did feel bad, and we tried to fix it in post, and it was unfixable. And
It was too uneven. So one would be really loud because they had their own microphone,
yeah.
but then you're switching back and forth between microphones. It's like you're doing the wave or something. It just
And
wasn't.
those are probably the worst moments for us because we let in those moments we let other people down. Even on this new technology that we're using, Zencaster, I recently interviewed a man named Stephen Brookfield. Wonderful interview if you haven't heard it yet, about anti-racism. And when when we finished, I couldn't find the recording, and I emailed him and said, I think it's gone. I'm so sorry. And then we were able to locate it through Zencaster. So those moments, I'm sitting by myself in this room and the sweat starts pouring, the realization I am like, I don't know if I hit the ground at that point, but pretty close. It was an awful moment. But I'm so glad we got it. You know, the weirdest place I ever recorded was Phil Zimbardo's hotel room. That was weird. So the best place that I recorded was Danielle, my wife, and I, right before the pandemic, like 1 week before the pandemic, happened to be in Santa Clara, California, visiting a friend. So we were an half hour from Stanford, and so ended up going to, as I've already talked about, Albert Bandura's home, where he lives by himself. How old is Al now, Eric? Do you remember off the top of your head? 90?
I think he's got to be in his 90s.
Yeah. And he welcomed us into this beautiful home that he has lived in on the Stanford campus for, I don't know how many, 60 years or something like that. And had us in, and the inside of his house was all, mid-century modern, but it wasn't the new stuff. It was the original mid-century modern furniture. And so to have, and then to have my spouse in the room and to be able to chat with him was an incredible location for doing that interview.
That takes us to the future of PsychSessions. Dave Kreiner wants to know if you're planning on continuing to use Zencaster, especially if it's going to bail you out of interviews that you think you have lost. And David Kim is wondering how long you plan to run PsychSessions. And then just a general, what's the future hold for?
Well, there's no plan. At this point, we have never talked about the end. We've only talked about what happens if one of us can't do it anymore, that we would like to keep it going. We would like PsychSessions to continue beyond us, whether we can't do it anymore or we choose to go in a different direction creatively or something like that. We would like it to continue. What was the other question that I'm missing?
Continue using Zencaster?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And from the beginning of the pandemic, I was saying to others that this is going to offer us this ability to get uncomfortable and to gain all these skills, Eric, that
Finally.
that we didn't know that we could do. And we're going to learn new things. And here we are with PsychSessions. And now this conversation or this question comes up, and I've never even thought about that question. Once we get back face to face, if we could continue, I'd say absolutely. This service is unbelievable in so many ways. It does so many things for us that cost me time in post, and it does them automatically. At the same time, our preferred method will always be, and I can speak for Eric here, our preferred method will always be face to your face.
Absolutely. So let me piggyback again on Garth. Zencaster has opened up the possibility to interview people that will never go to a conference ever again. So you will hear, after episode 100, you'll hear from Mark Ware. from Creighton University. You'll hear from Michael Wertheimer, who retired from the University of Colorado at Boulder. On my hit parade would be people like Ginny Matthey, would be people like Stephen Davis, would be people like Bill Buskis, but people who aren't going to conferences anymore. I mean, I think Zencastr is the way to do that. But Garth's exactly right. One of the things when you do a Zencastr type interview, we don't do face to face. And so when you start listening to these ones that we've recorded audio only, we step on each other because we're not doing these. We don't have this audio cue of, okay, I've stopped talking. Now it's your turn to start talking. We step on each other in the audio.
I'm sure some social psychologist in this room could also tell us about what we're missing kind of emotionally in communication and those kinds of things.
I'm sure there's some fancy social psychology word that we don't need, propinquity or something like that. I don't know. Something about distancing and something crappity crap. I don't know, some sort of word that they use. But other things in the future, I think we're limited by our creativity. First off, I agree with Garth. I want this to continue. PsychSessions is now a 501c3, a nonprofit organization, thanks to Garth and his work. Garth does really almost all the work, to be honest with you. We're 501c3. We're going to move from the very pedestrian vanilla website to a real website. I would say the next 6 months, there's going to be an app that you can download for an iOS or Android where you can get directly to our episodes with added PDFs. I'd like to see us have transcripts in the future. I'd like to be able to send you to a store called Threadless where you can purchase swag if you want to, because you need a water bottle with our logo on it. You really do. You just didn't know you needed that before tonight. For whatever, or a baseball cap or a 3XL polo shirt. No, wait, that's what I need. So we've got Ask Psych Sessions, we've got Sodal Psych Sessions. The world's our oyster. We've done intro Psych Sessions. We need research method Psych Sessions mini-series. We need a stat Psych Sessions. We need a developmental Psych Sessions.
Yeah.
We can have guest editors for those. It doesn't have to be those. Just like a journal can have a guest editor, we can have guest editors. We can have guest hosts. And so there's plenty to share here.
I think there's also the opportunity, and we've even talked about this recently, there's an opportunity to get students who would be interested and get students involved in some of the work that we do with Psych Sessions. I also think that just with growth there, we just have to figure out a way to sustain all of these ideas that we have when it comes to all the things that maybe we don't think about. Putting out a new series means somebody's out there getting interviews, somebody's using Zencastr and recording equipment, somebody's editing it, somebody is marketing it. And so we haven't figured out, I think we're pretty close to maxing our capacity. So thanks again to our new hosts and partners, Anna and Marianne, because they've
been so patient with us.
We have these ideas and we just can't do it all. And some of you have great ideas and have talked with us about those, but we're not going to stop anytime soon. We're going to keep going with all of these ideas.
I mean, we want to launch a book club where someone is hosting a book club and you've got 4 or 5 people reading a book, and your book club meeting is essentially recorded on Zencastr. And then people who are reading along with you, maybe they're behind or not, but then the book club meets and records, and then other people can come along at any time they want to and listen to the discussion of chapter 1 or to listen to the discussion of chapter 2. I mean, think of an idea, and odds are we can probably figure out a way to do it. But Garth's right. We have to figure out the bandwidth and the infrastructure. So we always appreciate your patience and your enthusiasm as we figure it out. There's a lot going on at World Headquarters, I got to tell you.
Well, this has been it. We talked for, I think, many months about what episode 100 would look like.
How many months was it, Garth?
Oh, many, many months. And I think maybe even pre-pandemic, and we had some really cool ideas that we thought through, and then we landed on this, and we landed on why not get all our friends together to join us for this. I've been to a live podcast recording before. They're really fun to go to in your hometown, where they rent a theater and you see your friends up on stage, your hosts doing that. This is what we were trying to create in this new world, and so I hope that for me it was great. I'm so glad we did it. And it was really nice to just hear these stories. There's one thing that I know you're going to kick yourself if you don't mention, and that is, do you want to just talk about the Bill McKeachie interview real briefly? I know that was a highlight for you.
Man, I almost got through only crying once. Bill McKeachie is special to a lot of people. Jane and I are really close. I think Jane was actually very much closer to him than I was, but seeing Bill was really extra special. When you get to be in your 90s, obviously he was deteriorating. He was still in really pretty good shape by the time we saw him. About a year later, he started to fade pretty fast. That was really just a highlight of the series. You're not supposed to play favorites with episodes, just like you're not supposed to play favorites with children. But that was special to be able to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan. The whole family was supportive. Lisa Danielson, his niece, was there. His daughter, Linda, had approved it. Jane was originally going to meet us there and be part of it, and had things come along that prevented her from joining us. Just really special. Really special.
Yeah. One of the things that we did, you never know what is going to, you make little decisions in the moment. I think Judd Apatow, the director and producer comedian, said, always be recording. And for us that day, we had two setups. Eric and I both brought our recorders with us, our mobile setup that we travel with generally. And we knew that we were going to kind of set one of them up. The other one was for a backup because you don't go to Michigan twice to do this, right? And but I threw on this, what we call a snowball mic, and which would just get the ambient noise in the room. If you want to know what the snowball mic sounds like, Susan Nolan's interview was done on a snowball mic because we were having some problems, or maybe that's all I had. So it sounds a little different. But what I did is, while we were finishing up with Bill McKeachie and taking down the microphones, I threw on the snowball mic recorder just so we didn't want to lose anything. In fact, I don't think we wanted that time to end. And that's probably the reason why I pressed record is, it was my 1 hour with Bill McKeachie and I didn't want it to end. And so at that moment, hit record. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe nothing happens and you just delete it afterwards. But Eric, you like telling this part of the story, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think you were asking about some of the artifacts that he had outside his room. He had some things from Michigan. He had some things from his childhood growing up. And he had, it must have been a high school logo. I think you were asking him about it. And he told the story that he had written the song for the alma mater for some high school locally nearby. And not only did he know it, but he sang it for us. And Garth captured it on that snowball microphone. And if you listen to his episode, you'll hear him singing it.
I think we clipped it in right at the end. I think you have to stick around right to the end, and it's tagged after the interview ends. I think we have him singing I think it's the Holly High song.
And that's a pretty mystical, magical moment to hear, because music was a big part of Bill McKeachie's life, his entire life. Part of his life being a avid churchgoer, playing piano for church, playing piano in local bars, where he would tell the story that the park keep would ask him what he wanted, and he would ask them to set him up with a row of Cokes, on top of the piano. Music was a deeply important part of Bill's life.
Yeah. Well, we want to again thank every one of you for being here tonight. And if you're not here live with us, thank you for listening here a few days later. We want to thank you for your support. It means everything to us. it this is just such fun to do. We started by saying it's a labor of love, and you all make it so easy to do this work. So thank you, and thank you for the gift of your friendships and relationships, which have grown. We feel lucky that with Psych Sessions, we've gotten to know many of you better than we would have known you, maybe just by passing at a conference or even a dinner. Sitting down with a colleague for an hour and getting into their backstory again is a gift to us, and so we want to thank you all for being here. Take good care out there. Thanks.